Now, contemplate these words on the screen with me for a moment before we drop the slide and I can see you all. And as we do, let me ask you, do you recall the story of the burning bush and Moses, right? You know the story. God, Yahweh specifically, appears to Moses in a fiery shrub so that Moses can become on fire with the good news of his people's liberation from Egypt. A bush on fire that, interestingly enough, is not consumed by the fire. Much like God's promise in Isaiah here, not to consume the people with fire. For perhaps God is not a consumer. Instead, Isaiah's God implies to us today, God gives us the strength that we might pass through the flood and the fire, through our trials and tribulations. Pass through them. Go through them. Not that we might simply get through these challenging times of ongoing COVID and ongoing insurrection, what remains of a so-called democracy built on the caste system that we are. Hunker down in the defensive crouch, a clench, white-knuckling through it all. We're going to get through this, we cry. We're going to get through this. But Isaiah's God promises a bit more today. More today than getting through. Isaiah's God promises us today that we can go through these times. And the quotation has been attributed to Churchill and Lincoln. You know that old joke Lincoln says, don't believe everything you read on the internet? You know, Lincoln said that? No. But this quotation has been attributed to Churchill. If you're going to go through hell, keep on going. Keep going through these times. For God is present and God protects. Or does God protect? Protect those church members I have known who have suffered sometimes over a decade with dementia. And protect their families who must sit idly by to say long and sad goodbyes. Does God protect all that from happening? Did God protect last month our church member in Brazil, Dr. David de Souza, from dying suddenly at age 46, working with the World Bank? Or protect his wife, Anna, and their 3 children that he has left behind? Did God avow to protect those long-suffering exiled peoples of Isaiah's time? Some protective force that God had been. You see, sometimes, though, I feel we set God up. We set God up when we minimize the divine as some sort of holy protective shield. And so when that protective shield may fall away and fail us, we can then blame God for the bad things that happen. And in blaming God for the bad things that happen, we give ourselves an excuse to opt out. No longer having to grapple with or wrestle with or otherwise engage ourselves with the flames and the drench of the divine force in which we live. It's too close for comfort. When we're always talking about God protecting, but that fails us, then we get a little too close to comfort for us. They become too hot, the flames, and the drench too wet. So when a protectionist God fails us, and that sort of God always will, we can lose the heart and capacity to go through things anymore. We settle for just getting through them. We sell ourselves short as we sell God short. Now, I don't quote our Reformed tradition a lot. Sometimes I think we explain things better than experience them. We calculate things better than contemplate them. We're more into transaction than transformation. But the Reformed tradition of our Presbyterian church does have a few good things to say about the nature of God. This tradition of ours unpacks passages such as this one quite well. Our Reformed tradition that understands God is more than just a general feeling of presence on one hand, and more than a spurious hard shell of protection on the other hand, that God is something deeper and something stronger than mere presence, and more liberating and honest than being protective. That God is providence, providing for us in the midst of our vulnerable, harm-happening, crucifying world. Providing for us not just to get through, but to what? Go through. Go through these isolating, atomizing days when our delusions of democracy are so exposed. Days where nearly any semblance of shared social knowledge is gone. It's no more. Days of illness and deep dis-ease, personal, communal, existential. And so we come to church. We become church to remind ourselves that we go through rivers and waters and fires. So many in our world simply try to get through. So many just try to get through. If those without some sort of faith transcend it, get to dealing with them at all. Waters of our baptisms to pass through, spirit fire to walk through. Waters and fires that do not drown or consume. Drown or consume our hopes, our hearts, and our celebration today of our church's new life and our new ruling elders, including the ordination of a woman serving for the very first time, and let's just say it, her 6 decades on earth. Baptismal waters and spirit fire that testify that Lisa and Paul and Joan will not just help our church get through these times, but what? They will see that our church goes through these times. Not because God is just hanging around saying, present, present. Or on the other hand, God is hovering protective over us as some sort of cosmic helicopter parent. But because somewhere between and beneath simple presence and our spurious claims of God's protection, somewhere God provides so that we can pass through, go through these days. Amidst a world struggling desperately just to get through, God provides so we can persevere in ways beyond our wildest imaginings. Thanks be. Amen.
Amen.